And then for the structure, we're going to start with alumni introductions, then we're going into moderated questions, and then afterwards we'll open it up to student questions. So I'm going to quickly share my screen to have the bios for the alumni up when we do the introduction. So 1 second. Yeah, so if we could.
I can see. So do you want me to run through my brief intro?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I'm Sage Reisner. I work with a consulting firm called Alvarez and Marsal. I'm not sure if any of you guys have heard of it. We're based and headquartered out of New York City, but have offices all over the world. I graduated from Hopkins in 2016, majoring in psychology, brain sciences, and minored in entrepreneurship and management. It took me a while to declare a major, so I definitely took classes in just about everywhere. I was very active in Spring Fair, Dance Marathon, AK Psi, Kappa Kappa Gamma, many others I probably can't think of off the top of my head. But since graduating, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so consulting was sort of what everyone talks about as being the kind of route to go through, and work with one of the practices in Alvarez and Marsal, which is focused on, we call it corporate performance improvement, but you might hear other places, performance improvement, business consulting, really helping more healthy companies or companies that are not quite bankrupt to do improvement programs and things that they usually can't manage with the folks in-house.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, hi everyone. I'm Anna Bengoechea. Oh gosh, you didn't have to put the pronunciation there. I thought you were gonna introduce me, how embarrassing. Anyway, that's how you pronounce my name. Anyway, I graduated 2017. My major was public health and my minor was in global environmental change and sustainability. I actually also went on to do the 5-year program. I did my master's in environmental health at Bloomberg School of Public Health. Absolutely love that. And my extracurriculars, I was in varsity soccer as well as in Alpha Phi. And what I do, I work for Booz and Hamilton. And although I'm aligned, which it's kind of basically there's different accounts that you can work for in consulting firms, at least at Booz and Hamilton, that's how they split it up. And so I'm in the health account, clearly public health. Master's in health, everything kind of lines up to that, but I actually work with more disaster management, which is what the government contract I support steadily does. So I work specifically in developing exercises, again, to make sure that we're prepared for the next big disaster. As we all know, COVID is currently impacting us, but we also had a terrible hurricane season. So preparedness is always on the top of my mind, and I hope it's on yours. But yeah, excited to be here and answer all your questions.
Hey y'all, I'm AJ. Thank you for having me here tonight. Like Anna, I am also working at Booz Allen Hamilton. I graduated back in 2019, which feels like a decade ago, but it was only last year, really. I majored in public health and French with a concentration in health policy and management. While at Hopkins, I was primarily involved with SGA, along with Olivia, who's also on the call tonight. And then over the course of my 4 years, I also got involved with some other public health organizations like the Alzheimer's Medical Symposium, like the Hippocrates Med Review, and then I also did French Club and was part of the Model UN organization. And then like Anna, I'm currently involved with the firm's health account, supporting public health strategy and operations projects. Over the past year, I primarily supported the VA with their support of the operations on 300 military bases of service members transitioning to civilian life. And then more recently, I've transitioned onto 2 new projects, one supporting the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, enhance their support of Medicare advantage providers to beneficiaries, and one supporting the NIH improve their common data element repository.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm Olivia. I'm super happy to be here. So I just graduated, which also feels like a decade ago, like AJ said, but it was really only 6 months ago. I majored in political science and Spanish, and I minored in social policy. During my time at Hopkins, I was involved in a lot of different things like SGA. I also studied abroad in Madrid and tutorial project, but my favorite thing was I worked at the Office of Diversity and Inclusion all 4 years. That's something really important to me and something that I'm also involved with at Accenture. So super happy to talk about that. Right now, I am a consulting development analyst in the commercial sector. So I also just started. So I started a couple weeks ago, so I can talk a lot about what it's been like to start in COVID and just kind of how different companies are adapting to that. I am either interested in health and public services or a very different route, consumer goods and retail, and kind of finding the intersection between consulting and fashion. So I have, I don't know, 2 different paths I'm pursuing.
Thank you for all those wonderful introductions. So we're now going to transition into the moderated questions portion of the event.
Awesome. All right, so to get us started, we'd love to hear a little bit about kind of your path and how you ultimately decided that you were going to go into consulting. And then, if you have kind of transitioned into kind of like your niche and like a specific role in consulting, how did you know that that one was the right one for you? So we can kind of popcorn it.
I can go first. So I mentioned it a bit. Really didn't know what I wanted to necessarily do long term, so went the consulting route, and it gave me a lot of experience in different scenarios, which I really wanted. I kind of liked that when you come in as a consultant, people do look to you for the answers. So a lot of it's fake it till you make it, and the other half is thinking critically, but also thinking with common sense. And I think I liked kind of coming in, with a fresh perspective, much more objective than people who've been there possibly their whole career, and that they look to you for help, and you get in there and you get shit done, as they say. I have largely been focused on large technology transformations. I think a lot of the consulting industry is heading in the direction of most things related to technology. So even if you don't go in, you heard psychology and business, I didn't necessarily have a background in, possibly old school technology, let alone, SaaS providers and things like that. You pick it up really fast, the language, but it is where the industry is going. It is where a lot of change is. And it is kind of, I'm going to be completely honest, I don't know about some of the other firms, but your first project, you don't control really that much about what you get on. So it's a huge, drink from the fire hose, learn from experience. And then as you do the work, you possibly get extended on projects and do other things. And you start to, without even totally noticing it, start to build your specialty. So I think, being purposeful about networking afterward to make sure you get into other types of projects if you want that experience, or if you really like what you're working on, great. You do it once, you're kind of an expert in the world of consulting. So I would say, that's kind of how I ended up in my technology specialty, is I started getting on a lot of projects related to it. And it's sort of where the industry often is going.
Yeah, I can add a bit to that also from my experience. So I didn't really think I wanted to go into consulting. I've been in the consulting world for 2 years, and I still don't know if this is the right place for me. And that's okay, because the reason why I've stayed this way is because at least I'm learning something new every day. And I think that's really how you find where you fit in, and kind of to answer that question. So I got into the consulting world through networking, through events like this, where I had a friend send my resume up. I thought I'd applied. Turns out my resume didn't go through. He's like, let me help you there. So again, those are the connections that really help you get a job, like me. So I was then on the bench, which in Booz Allen means you don't have a project. And you're just kind of like looking around, networking. Networking is a really big part about consulting, as Sage was just saying. So super important. I wouldn't even say I'm very good at it. I don't like talking to random people, but here I am. I'll just talk a lot. So please cut me off if I continue to talk for the next 10 minutes. But basically how it works, or how I got into my disaster work was really through, again, my own research. I had done my thesis at Bloomberg was on FEMA and the Hurricane Katrina response. So I kind of sought that out and made that my home. With that being said, again, I'm an oddball because not only am I in a totally different project than the people who who actually like promote me, or the people who are right above me, like they don't work at all. They have no idea about what I'm doing every day. So I'm in a totally different contract, but not only that, I've been there for 2 years. So I'm not doing consulting how a lot of people do consulting, which is switching to different projects. And definitely there's pros and cons to that. But the reason why I've stayed, the reason why I continue to do the same contract is because, again, of that learning curve, which is what Sage was talking about, that you, as long as you're learning, as long as you're continuing to make yourself the valuable consultant that I think we can all be, then maybe that's the right project for you. So that's my little spiel.
Yeah, I can go next. So like what everyone else has said so far, I really didn't and still don't know what I want to do. I feel like I should be on your side because I was just there a year ago. But about a year and a half ago, I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to do. Like I thought I wanted to go into politics, hence the poli-sci major, but just due to like the political climate, I was really exhausted by it. And it was super like emotionally taxing. So I was just like, I'm going to step away from it for a second. But then I was like, what should I do? And so I think consulting was really attractive to me just because there's such a diversity of skill sets among all the people that you're surrounded with. So like currently I'm on a project with someone who studied industrial engineering, or someone who studied just something completely different, something very different than what I studied. And so I would say I ended up in consulting just because I wanted, as the other people have said, just a new challenge every day. And like the biggest thing for me was that I just wanted to continue learning. So I didn't want it to be like I graduated college and then I was just like at a desk all day and like typing on a computer and not really having a lot of like mentally stimulating or challenging work. I wanted to continue learning, and I always want to be like in 10 years and 20 years and 30 years. And so I think consulting was really good for me in two ways. One, that it's the perfect place if you don't know what you want to do, because you interact with so many industries. And in a certain sense, I feel like it's a bit of an extension of college, right? Like it's like, oh, what industry are you going to align with? Or like what major, you know what I mean? Like that kind of vibe. So for that reason, and then the second reason is just I get to continue learning. So yeah, echoing what everyone else said, but that's just my experience.
So to echo what everyone else has said so far too, I would say that my journey to consulting was also quite unconventional. When I started at Hopkins, I had no idea I wanted to go into consulting. I was totally pre-med. I took Orgo and all the those awful science classes. I mean, they're fun, but very difficult. I didn't even know what consulting was until junior year. And there was suddenly this mad rush of people in my class who were super interested in it. And I had no idea what it was. And so I started to look into it more. And, at the time as a junior, I thought that so much Olivia was planning to go into either politics or a FedGov position. And then I realized that with consulting, there are just so many more options, and you have more time to explore what you're truly interested in. And you have time to really explore skill sets that, you might not have had time to, learn in college, whether it's like Tableau or like UI, UX, or just really cool tech skills you wouldn't have had the chance to do in a more academic environment. So by the time I got to be a senior, I remember my friend Ting Fang and I, she was also in SGA. We I remember during consulting week and during the career fair week, we just ran around and just tried to talk to as many people as we could, and network with as many people as we could. And we came across Booz Allen, and I remember that immediately I was super interested in that. It kind of bridged my interests that I had been developing the past few years with politics and FedGov stuff, with like the field of business and being able to learn a bunch about every industry. And so, when I applied and got into Booz Allen, I was super excited. And, to whatever, to echo what everyone else has been saying, it's been a really wonderful journey since then. I have had the opportunity to learn from people who have, from everyone who, has had like, PhD in like bioengineering, all the way to someone who was a former rear admiral in the Navy and like literally led like entire ship fleets during the Iraq War. So like, there's been a huge variety of people I've learned from, and, I've really enjoyed the opportunity to learn, even more about public health and implementation of public health than I had, I think, in an academic context. And, to Anna's point, I think that at Booz Allen especially, because we have such a large field of business ranging from public health all the way to like defense and like, civil government, I think there's just so many opportunities to, grow in different projects and, branch out even of the industry, the field that you might have come out of Hopkins with a degree in.
It seems like, you all have kind of covered that there might not be a typical day, and that, there's always new things happening, which is really exciting about the role. But if you could try to help us better understand, what are some of the things you are typically working on? So maybe more so like responsibilities of the job, or, common things you do find yourself doing. We'd love to hear a little bit about that as well.
I can go first because I really relate to this question. Like when I first took this job at Accenture, my mom would ask me like, what are you going to be doing every day? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I really don't know. I just know it's problem solving. Like that was all I knew. So obviously I mentioned like I'm still new, so I've been going through a lot of training. But most day to day, I'm currently on a healthcare project. So it's been like a big learning curve for me, but in the best way possible. And so a lot of it is client facing work. So we do have that aspect where we interact with the client, obviously virtually during this time. And then in addition to that, I do a lot of like Excel and PowerPoint. I'm sure you all have heard you do a lot of Excel and PowerPoint. I definitely do that. So just on a day-to-day, it's kind of doing tasks for people, a lot of Excel, like I said, but in addition to that, I think like the part of the day-to-day that I really love is getting to have like coffee chats with people. So everyone's mentioned networking so far, and I have such a love-hate relationship with that word because I'm always like, am I doing enough networking? Am I not doing enough? Like when is it too much? Like, am I driving myself crazy? Or I don't know. So that's become my favorite part, is just interacting with different people who work on different projects. And it's been really insightful just to learn about different tools that I could develop, or, how I could pursue like +1s at Accenture, which are just like extracurricular activities in college. So like, yes, you have the day-to-day, and that's a huge part of your job, but then also just building your network, as everyone's been saying, is another huge part of what I do every day. So yeah.
I would definitely say networking is a definite theme here, but I would say that there's no such thing as the same type of day. Every project that you're on is going to mean your day's filled a little bit differently, though I would say we probably could all say we spend way too much time right now on Zoom, Teams, Skype, whatever way you want to converse. But I think consultants were uniquely ready for this opportunity, this like change in our world, because this was like every Friday when you weren't at your client. At least that was my experience. But I would say typical week, Monday before all this stuff, it would be Monday morning, you're traveling to your client, you get there by like late morning, midday, and you were like late to work basically because everything's happening. So you get up to speed and you're doing work probably. And the thing about doing your client work is often you're on calls anyway, at least for me. So, being in technology means you're often working with a lot of people who are either offshore or not based in the one location you happen to be working in. So a mix of meetings and calls and stuff, but I think overall teams, at least at my firm, are set up where they're somewhat small. So even when I first joined the firm and was an analyst, I was client facing day one, for better or worse. You're looked to as having the answers or getting the answers pretty quickly. So you as an analyst, your job is to like know the data or read as much as you can of like whatever documentation they've provided you. So at least you can be that add value. You'll hear all the time is, you'll be the person who knew the numbers, or you're the person who read all the policies, or you're the person who knew all the, because you're the one who did all the reading and synthesized and came up with what was really important in whatever deliverable, Excel, PowerPoint, absolutely. You could be writing policies and procedures for things you don't know anything about, but they don't know that, and you don't have to say that. So I would say there's no typical day. I would say Thursdays become the day that you travel home in the evening, and so don't have Thursday night plans probably. And then Friday, we usually go into the office, which is unusual because we are a smaller firm, and so we try to keep the family atmosphere, the A&M community, and like we at least once a month we'll come together. We'll do a happy hour. We'll do a monthly presentation on what everyone's been doing. So we are a smaller practice. You might not, see that at Accenture, which is much bigger. So it's nice because they'll say this is where everyone in the practice out of the New York office is right now, and like it was these people's birthdays, so it was this person's got married, and it's really cute. I think to keep the sense of community when you're off traveling in your own spot, with your teams, which you become very close to. I would say no typical day, but one thing I've definitely found is, at least kind of a typical month because you kind of have there's no such thing, but yeah, you're definitely at least in my firm, very much client facing, every day. I think depending on how your team is set up, your roles might be more focused on presenting in calls or you might be more on the back end and developing the materials to get ready. So I think that varies. And I think one piece of advice I would say is don't go ahead of your boots, but if you have to be your own best advocate in consulting and your biggest advocate. That would be going for networking. That would be getting out of the typical project you're always on and trying to go for something else. It's also asking for more when you're ready, because people might not be thinking about you. So giving you more. So, really advocating for yourself to take on more responsibility is how you're more likely to, get farther. No typical day.
Yeah, to build on what Olivia and Sage said, I would say that the most typical period of time that I could probably describe is probably a week to a month. And I would probably put things into buckets of things that happen, kind of like a deck of cards. You might not get the same deck of cards, but what's in the deck is kind of similar in that there is a set, usually for each project, no matter what we're working on, there usually is some kind of team call once a week or twice a week to touch base and get a sense of what needs to be done that week for the client. And then some clients, for example, in the VA, they wanted to have a call with us every day because we were basically managing a 300-person program for them around the world. So that involved a lot of just daily calls and risk reporting. And then, more recently on the projects I'm working on for NIH and CMS, the client's a little more hands-off because it's a smaller team. There's only 3 of us working on it for each project. And, the client is a little more relaxed than the VA is. So less calls with the client on those projects. But then otherwise, besides meetings, to Olivia's point, it's a lot of it is, just working with day-to-day Microsoft tools, Word, PowerPoint, Excel. And then depending on, to Sage's point, depending on what you kind of, put your hand up for, you might also get to work on, more analytical things. So over the course of last winter, before the pandemic began, I had the opportunity to kind of raise my hand and work with some of our Tableau analytics for our VA project. And so I was kind of able to learn new skills with that and mix up the daily routine there. And then in addition to project work, I'm also involved in one of our firm's extracurriculars, which is our Asian American network. So usually after work, Usually we have calls for that. And basically what we do there is basically organize social events and professional development events for Asian American professionals in the firm. And we also recently have been working on more intersectional events with other networks in the firm to kind of improve the D&I work we have within Booz Allen. So definitely a lot of different things, not a typical day, but definitely a typical week or month.
I guess there's nothing else to add, except for I guess I'll just echo, you really do as much as you like volunteer for, and you kind of show that you're capable of doing. So I was really lucky where when I first came in, a lot was going on. So I was like, yeah, I'll do that, and that. And all of a sudden now, 2 years in, I'm able to lead a specific part of the contract just because, again, of what I did 2 years ago, which is volunteer. And yeah, I'll echo, just please, if there's anything I can say, like learn how to use Microsoft Excel, learn how to use Microsoft Word, learn how to do section breaks in Microsoft Word, and all of that, because it ends up being important, or at least learn how to Google it. Because that weirdly differentiates a lot of people in this field. And so don't let it bring you down, because it shouldn't. So no typical day here, except for the meetings that I plan with my clients, because unfortunately, I have clients that are a little bit more like, what are they doing in work from home? No one really knows, unfortunately. So that just means I have to be kind of pinging them saying, this is what we should be doing, etc. So you have to be on top of it. I know there are days when I truly don't feel like getting out of bed, but at least starting with that email that will get the conversation started goes a long way.
It's a pretty good segue to our next question. I am going to skip one, Daphne, just so that other people can have a chance to ask questions, because I'm sure that they have some good ones. But I think, the last thing for this kind of moderated part initially is just, what advice do you have for people looking to, go into consulting? At the Life Design Lab, people are, consistently coming to us. There's clubs like this one, are really trying to put the kind of blocks on top of each other to really, start out in the consulting field. So what advice do you have for people looking to get involved, particular internships, immersive experiences? Like Anna said, like definitely know Excel, definitely know some of these things. What general advice do you have for us there?
I would say it's important to keep an open mind and to be willing to learn. In that, I think that, especially because there are so many incredible opportunities in consulting to learn skills you might not even have heard of when you graduated, I think it's important to, be willing to explore and, to what everyone else has said so far, just meet as many people as you can in, even just your first few months, in consulting, because those first few connections, those first few things you learn can really build into really incredible projects and opportunities down the road. And, you might find that, the specialty or the thing you're the most passionate about for the next 10 years isn't something that you discover until a few months in. But to get there, you have to have an open mind and be willing to learn and explore always.
I can go next. So a very tangible thing that I would do is just reach out to people on LinkedIn. So obviously now we're all in a virtual environment, but even a year ago, I would just message people who also went to Hopkins and just asking them for like 15-minute talks, just to kind of discuss like what they did, what advice they had. And oftentimes they'd like offer to read over my resume or refer me or just, help me in whatever way they can. So it's really amazing how nice people are. So don't be scared. They definitely want to help you. I know I really do, just to pay it forward, because so many Hopkins alums helped me. So in addition to that, my other piece of advice is to something that I've really learned is don't pretend to be something you're not. So like I have a humanities background. Like I'm never going to be like a coder, or like anything super techy. And like when I first got into consulting, I was like, oh my God, I need to learn X, Y, and Z so that I can be a competitive applicant. And it's like, no, you don't. Like, everyone brings something different to the table. And starting at Accenture and working with all of my peers has really validated that for me, just because, like I said, we all come from a diverse background, we all have different skill sets, and it all adds value to the team. So like, of course, there's certain things you need to know, like how to talk about the cloud broadly, but like, do you have to know all the intricacies or know how to do certain things within that? No, and that's okay. But if tech is your thing, that's also great. And conversely, you don't need to have to, know all the side of like client facing roles, so it's just, I would just say, don't pretend to be don't try to be something you're not, because like, they'll appreciate you if you come as you are.
I definitely think that is accurate after coming out of like recruiting season. So one thing don't sit in that interview and be disingenuous and like no one wants to hear that kind of thing. But and so I would completely echo that. I would think, kind of thinking back, I like read Case in Point, and that definitely helped me a lot in the interview process. Just having ways to approach problems from a very organized perspective. Hearing what people talk about now, having just gone through like being on the other side and recruiting people, is they're still using that book. So I don't know, I still recommend doing that to help you in case studies. And I do think something that things aren't always as hard as they like sound. Like to someone who's been in the industry the whole time, they're like, this program seems so big and complex, or like, I don't understand technology. But like, using common sense and breaking things down very logically, which all Hopkins students know how to do, is usually going to get you farther than getting like stumped by a problem or overthinking something. And I'm your queen of overthinking things. So trust your gut and like breaking things down very logically, and then asking smart, good questions. And definitely learn how to Google. Like, the last thing you want to do is show up and be like, what's this thing? And you totally could have Googled it. But knowing how to ask good questions is really important. And then I also do think it's act like fake it till you make it. Do lots of like research, ask good questions, get good mentors. So keep an eye out as you're networking on people that you kind of want to learn more from. And people love nothing more than talking about themselves, but they also are really flattered when you're like, I'd love to keep like this conversation going. Like, would you mind, every month or so getting on for 15 minutes? Like, I was always scared to ask for that time and ask for that, but like, people like to feel appreciated, and having mentors who will speak up for you, both help and who want to give you advice on how to take your career in different directions, like that is so essential. I guess especially in my company, we're a little bit smaller, we're like getting on projects, there's a staffer, but it's really up to you to like craft your own path. So having people in a room to say good things about you, or to say, yeah, like she stepped up and ran recruiting and she was fully billable on a project, and I think she was also leading this other thing. People like really respect that, but if they don't know that you did all that stuff, like it won't go anywhere. So having people who A, care about your development, and B, know about what you're doing is awesome. As Hopkins students, we all like know how to do lots of extracurriculars and stuff, but you have to be, as I said, your biggest advocate, and getting people to talk up for you is so important. So I would, as you're starting to get into consulting and you meet people and stuff, like, keep those relationships going. It's so important. And not to mention, they're going to be like, and so work done later, but like, it's really important to have all those relationships and people in your corner.
Yeah, and then I think one thing that Sage was touching on was just time management. I think, again, being Hopkins students, we all know how to do that. But just making sure that the minute that so if consulting is what you decide to pursue, just right away, make sure that you are kind of managing your time as well as possible, because again, that's what people notice. Especially in a field like consulting, which again, I think is the little funkiness of it, is that billability aspect. That you always want to make sure that you're billable. If you have 8 hours to bill a day, you want to make sure that you're not billing, over 8 hours if you don't have to. There are certain reasons, there are caveats to that, of course, and then that you're not, billing less hours and all of a sudden not giving, the contract the money that they need. So there's a lot of funkiness to that. And it's just being able to manage your time, manage how you, again, use that extra time as Sage. And I think Olivia was saying of going to, or AJ for extracurriculars like the Asian network, which is awesome. And just making sure though that you are getting your work in on time, because at the end of the day, what the clients want is a good product. And the only way you can do that is if you can take it through all the processes of getting it reviewed, et cetera. So just, again, I would say that, but you guys are all doing step number one for the advice, which is just being here, showing us your face and learning a little bit about the field. So good job, everyone.
Perfect transition to student questions. Susie, I'm going to pass it to you.
Yes, thank you so much for everyone to share their experience. So now we'll open up for students to ask their questions. If anyone who have questions could just raise their hand. And also feel free to just type your questions in the chat box or message me or Daphne. And we could also read off your questions if you prefer it that way. Sebastian.
Yeah, yeah, my main question is so I heard how one of the things was that sort of like every day brings a new challenge. So I just wanted to know, is there like a general obstacle that you often have to overcome in your careers, and how do you overcome it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I kind of touch upon that right now. One of the clients that I'm working with are a little bit disengaged, especially in that like work from home. And not to say that it was different. I used to go to the client site every day. And it is a little bit, unfortunately, more of like a consultants kind of lead the way and pave the way. And I think that's really tough. Because as consultants, your job is to support the people who you're working with. So yes, we come in with a solution, but we also, in a way, have to make it seem like they thought of it and kind of help them get there. Because again, if we're just telling them what to do, then maybe we're not making it, the solution very sustainable, because, they'll forget what we did the next day, or God forbid, we lose our contract and they can't keep it going. So I would say the best way, again, is using everyone in your team, making sure that everyone is staying connected in how you work with the clients. And again, making sure that you are very much aware of both their strengths and their weaknesses, or areas for improvement, as consultants like to say. So as to kind of highlight those areas and not really not focus on the things that they could do better, but on the strengths, and then kind of work around that. But it is a little bit of this like playing game, this tightrope game of not stepping too far, but also nudging them in the right direction. So I think, at least personally, that's a challenge I see. And I think that tends to happen with other clients as well. So again, being able to manage that is going to be key.
I think another challenge when you're coming out of school is, and I've heard too, so I'm very extroverted, and I can probably talk to a wall, but a lot of people who may not be as comfortable like going up to a random person or reaching out and getting time with them to get to know them, or you feel bad taking time out of people's busy days. Like, you kind of have to get over that, because sort of like you have to network to get somewhere. And it's also, I was a little intimidated, like, when I'm the like lowly analyst, I'm supposed to go talk to like a VP and go tell them what to do, like that kind of, and honestly, managing, like if you're managing a service provider like an IBM or with DXC, like you're telling people who are much older than you that you what to do or how to do with their job. And it was something I struggled with in the beginning, being like, I don't want to be like insensitive or something like that, or make them, so you really have to, it's a tact of how to manage up both your own boss, both like taking time out of people's days and other, your client or a service provider. So it's definitely an art.
Great. Anyone else who'd like to add on to that question?
I think to build on what Anna said, I think that, it's really important to make sure that we build sustainable solutions for our clients. At least for a firm like Booz Allen, a lot of our work, 99% of our work is like federal government work. And so, it's pretty common for different consulting companies to kind of come in and out, even on the same project for an agency over the course of like a 10 to 15 year lifespan of a government program. And so I think it's important to really, one challenge for us has been really, making sure that the solutions we build are things that the government can really sustain, for years to come, especially because, a lot of ways, for our projects, it's not just, our own reputation as a company riding on the line. It's, I don't want to be dramatic, but like the well-being of everyone in the country. And so I think that, the challenge of building solutions that, are both really innovative and effective, but that also, can be sustained easily even after a company like Booz Allen or Accenture or Alvarez is no longer in the picture for our clients is really important. And that's definitely a challenge that I've seen even, early on working at Booz Allen.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone else has said. Someone mentioned being open-minded earlier, and I think going off of that, just being able to adapt, that's definitely a challenge. Like, especially coming in as an analyst, you might not get the project that you want. You might have to work with people that maybe you wouldn't have worked with outside of the job, but just being able to adapt and know that, like, while you might not have the most autonomy at the moment coming in, you eventually will, and every experience that you have will give you so much to learn. So just like take up and soak up as much of it as you can. So yeah.
Awesome.
Another thought, I guess, maybe this seems obvious, but like, ask for feedback, but also don't be defensive with feedback. I think a lot of people, their first reaction to getting possibly areas of improvement is to be defensive or explain it away. And that makes people less likely to want to give you feedback. So I think while it's not like a hurdle, but it is a hurdle for a lot of people, they'll take it personally. It's absolutely not personal. It's like, we all want everyone to be better. So, structuring your feedback is a whole art, and to do it well. But I do think if and when you go into whatever career, but especially consulting, given how adaptable you need to be, and like you've probably never done this before, is like ask for feedback, but also take it, internalize it, and really figure out your action plan on how to address it, because that's so key to getting staffed with those people again and making people like, you're not making the same mistake twice. So I would definitely say figure out or get peace of mind, and that you're getting negative things. Hopkins, we're all used to like we're grinding away to try to get A's and stuff or whatever, but going in and you don't want to be defensive about feedback. It's a strength to take feedback and act upon it. You're not going to be perfect, but you are going to be flexible and adaptable. So yeah.
Awesome. So next up we have Andrea.
Hi, I'm Andrea. I'm a sophomore majoring in economics, and I'm actually also part of the Consulting Club's exec board. And my question was, were there any particular experiences, for example, like classes or activities you did at Hopkins that helped you transition into your role?
I think for me, the biggest thing was definitely SGA. And I think part of that might be the fact that like it was just most of my time that I spent at Hopkins outside of class was SGA. But at least for me, like SGA in a lot of ways, because it involved interacting with so many stakeholders, ranging from, fellow students to faculty to administrators and staff. I think that, learning how to bridge the needs and the goals of so many different stakeholders and so many varying interests, I think has really helped me in consulting, and being able to, not only network and build relationships within my firm, but also, take a moment to, when I'm with a client, step out of my own shoes and see things from their perspective and see how, they want to approach a problem, see what they're, see underneath what they're, what they're saying with their words and what they really, want to get out of the solutions we're developing for them. So I think in that regard, being an SGA was not only, a personally incredible experience and humbling one, but also one where I learned so much about how people interact with each other and how, people can really help each other to achieve each other's goals.
I can go next. So I did the social policy minor. If anyone doesn't know what that is, it's like a semester intensive where you're with the same 10 people and you take 5 classes. And it's all about social policy. So like one was the American welfare state, or one was Baltimore specific, et cetera. It's not about the content that was very applicable to consulting for me, but it was more about the environment. So similar to what AJ was saying, just kind of having to interact with different individuals, but then also learning how to work in a team environment. So it very much reminds me of kind of where I'm at now with the team. You're with them all the time, whether you like it or not. It's great. You become really good friends with them. And you talk to them outside of work, inside of work, but they are really super major players in your life for the time that you're on the project. And that's been my experience. And so I'm really grateful that I had the social policy semester intensive just to kind of like get an understanding and learn how to be the best team player I could be.
My biggest Hopkins experience that helped me in my job, both like client related and actually just like internal initiatives, was definitely spring fair. I think, when you work with the same people all year towards getting something done, there's like this culmination at the end, and you are project managing something through to completion, and that was definitely, gave you confidence that you could do that and that you're good at organizing and being super on it and have a plan and execute the plan and escalate appropriately and all these things that, any project you're going to need to do. I also think I was doing a lot of negotiating with vendors, and I think that ends up being like a big part of one of my projects was negotiating with vendors. And I think having that kind of confidence and comfortability, both like written and verbal communications, that become essential to, acting on behalf of your client or speaking with your client. So I think overall that was definitely, all in all, the best preparation. And I think, frankly, they all remembered it just because they were like, oh, that's so cool that you did that. And they were like commenting about, running a beer garden or whatever. But it was definitely like a part of my Hopkins. Anytime, anything you've done where you've led something, like make sure they know that you've led something from start to finish, because they're looking for leadership, they're looking for grit. When have you struggled? When have you persevered and gotten to those, so those stories of whatever you've been part of, tell that story on what you led and what you did when you faced, adversity or challenge. So I think overall those sorts of experiences, no matter what you guys have done, tell that story, figure out what the story is, and don't lie and don't bullshit, but it might be, figure out how to tell your story effectively in a consulting context.
Anna, do you want to add on to that, or we could also move on?
If there was more questions, I didn't want to bog us down, but I agree, because I can't think of one thing. I wasn't in consulting club. Lord knows I didn't do spring fair. I could not have handled that. So, but every little thing counts. I think, as Sage was saying, it's weird what actually ends up helping you. And there's no way to know until you're there, which is why it's so important that you have an open mind, that you're ready to learn, because just as much there are like things that you're going to be ready for, as being in soccer, as being the captain, I led this crew, but at the same time, that is not ordinary life. Unfortunately, I'm not playing soccer at Booz Allen. So, learning, just like being able to learn through these new experiences, I think is really important. And you're going to start at the bottom, and that's okay. Because in the bottom, you can always grow and get to the top from there. So yeah.
For sure. Okay, so now we'll have Carolina.
Yeah. Hi. First of all, thank you everyone for taking the time to speak to all of us, I'm sure. I mean, I personally really appreciate it. So my question lies in how do you think the consulting field will change, or will it at all, in response to COVID?
I'm gonna let the other ones take this because I am still new. So yeah, you guys take it over.
Great question. I would love to know too. I think I wish this conversation was like in like 2 weeks once I get to ask that question in our annual meeting. But I think hopefully this tells a story that you don't need to be on client site to be effective. I really hope it does tell that story. I think you used to kind of be the understanding was like you earn your keep and like they know you're really good, and then you kind of have flexibility on if you're going to travel every week. But that's like a really antiquated model, and I think a lot of consulting has grown out of it, but people just keep coming back because the client learns to be dependent on you being there. So I hope like the client doesn't necessarily need to be here or need you there. So I do think that the travel world will definitely change, and you know, I think it would be really good for my health, really good for my work-life fit. I don't call it balance, it's probably not, but I do think it is important to be on client side. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, we should never have to go back, because it's actually really important, and you know, to form those relationships. I'm on my second project where I've never met my client in person. It's weird, but I do think that realm of consulting will change. Hopefully for the better, of making it a little bit more balanced and stuff, because I can't do work from home forever. I think I go crazy in my little New York City closet. But so I think that's one of the changes. Is that what you meant, or were you talking like industry, like our like transformation, automation, things like that? You meant both. Okay, well I think that's still my answer.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. There's definitely pros and cons if we're just talking about like the business aspect, not looking at like what fields we're targeting as much as clearly tech is huge. We all rely on it. We all need it. But pro for sure. I mean, as much as I love to travel, I also was traveling like every 2 weeks, was in a different part of the United States. Clearly, as with environmental background, that had a heavy burden, even though, again, I love to travel, but we don't need to be at every meeting and we don't have to be there in person. So I think this is definitely going to change the way that we do conferences. And I think also what we're learning here, just through like client call or like consultant to consultant calls, we are also bringing into the client saying, again, what if we did this meeting, saved some money by just putting it into a Teams meeting or putting it on Zoom, etc. But I think the con, and I think Sage was touching on this a little bit, is we consultants love to work, it seems. We'll work. And when we were at, the office or a client site, you have to end at 5, or, you could just kind of close out and leave and no one really expected you to be on the computer. Now the computer's always on and it's always just kind of like, oh, I know something's going to come to me pretty soon. Should I just take a peek or should I wait till tomorrow? So I think the consulting world is actually really flexible, and it's it's rapidly adapting to the environment. We're going to see some bumps in the road, but we're also going to see a lot of progress, especially with how we connect with our clients. So a lot of exciting things to come.
Awesome. So, sorry, AJ.
Well, I was just going to say that Anna and Sage, they summarize it really well. I think that there's going to be a long-term shift towards more trusted remote working. And I think that there'll be some cons to it, and lack of client interaction or less of it. But I think that, especially in terms of work-life balance and less impact on the environment, I think there'll be some really good long-term effects from it.
Great. Yeah. So I do believe we're running out of time and reaching the end of our session. So thank you to everyone who came, and thank you to all of our awesome panelists who answered so many questions and shared their experience. And I'm sure if any of you have more questions, they'd be more than happy to connect with you guys on LinkedIn and ask them personally. Yeah.
Quick question. Oh,
Yes.
yeah. So, will the PowerPoint be posted anywhere, or will we be emailed the PowerPoint? Like, how's that gonna work? I just want that for my records if possible.
Yeah, so we'll be able to share their PowerPoint, and we're going to also share the recording as well. So you can definitely keep on the lookout for that.
Okay, I'll keep an eye out with my email for that, sure. Yeah, and I just want to excuse me. I just want to thank our guests for coming out for talking about their careers. I really enjoyed hearing all about it. So yeah.
Thanks, Sebastian.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Good night, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Good job. It was so
Bye,
great.
guys. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't
It's
press leave.
okay.
Bye.